Hey guys, this is Mateo with Plugin Boutique, and today we're going to take a look at TrackSpacer from Wavesfactory. So this is actually a very, very powerful plugin and a very simple one. This basically is a multi-band dynamic EQ with a very simple control setup. It's basically just a ratio or amount with a high and low pass filters that go all the way from 20 to 20, and then you have an attack, release, LR, MS, and pan. You also have a freeze button so you can freeze whatever EQing you've done. This is basically a much more accurate version of a external sidechain compression or sidechain EQing, because this allows you to have bands of dynamic EQ. And because of that, you have the high and low pass filters to kind of tell the EQs what they're actually going to be listening to and dynamically processing. So obviously, the biggest thing that this would probably be used on would be when you're layering kicks and other bass instruments. But this can even be used on stuff like maybe one guitar needs to be in the middle, but the other one also has a very similar frequency response and it's clashing. You can easily do it like that. Now let's just go over the interface really quickly. Like I already said, you have a ratio knob, which is basically how much you're going to be compressing. This is your low pass filter. This goes from 20 all the way to 20K. Your high pass, 20K all the way down to 20 Hertz. You have your freeze button. You have this little button right here that activates your advanced panel, where you have your panning, which basically, if this is stereo, you can pan which side is going to be compressed or not. You have your left, right, or MS. And you have your attack and release times, and they go from 0.01 milliseconds for attack all the way up to 100 milliseconds attack. Your release is 1 milliseconds all the way to 700 milliseconds. And you also have a sidechain listen button right here, which will allow you to listen to your incoming sidechain. So let's just get rid of this, and we'll grab the TrackSpacer that we're actually using on this track. So in this song, we have a kick and bass that are kind of clashing a little bit. If I solo both of them up and I have TrackSpacer bypass, let's play it out. Now they sound fine in solo, but if you actually just have the kick soloed out, you can hear how the kick actually has a lot of bottom end that I'm trying to cut through that won't come out because the bass is covering it. And in the mix, it actually gets buried like around here and here and here. Right here and right here, it actually gets completely buried out. Here you can just barely hear a little bit of the clickiness, but here it's almost non-discernible from the bass note. Listen one more time. And that is a problem, because if I have to do that with every time the drummer hits the kick a little bit softer, it will kind of become an issue. Now, this is a Bob Dylan's cover, so a lot of attention to detail really does need to be taken. So what we're going to do is we're going to easily just make sure I have my sidechain activated. I like to use pre-fader. I'm going to turn on TrackSpacer, solo out my bass. I'm going to actually solo sidechain everything. So we're going to set this up to be doing nothing. And we solo the sidechain out. And we can see that it actually has a bunch of frequencies going on. If I actually bump it up to a 100% ratio. So let's see what happens if we use the high pass filter. So that sounds good. That's about where I want it to open up some space. So if we take that out of solo and we play it, and we actually bypass it. So already the stock settings are pretty good, but you do have full control over the attack and release. Now, if I do this way too crazy, you can hear what might happen. Now, you don't ever want to do that. So you do want to always keep in mind that your release should be fast, but not too fast where it sounds unnatural. I'm going to stick to around 58. And I'm also going to back up the attack, and I'm going to let out just a little bit of the transient, and I'm going to have it set to around 4 milliseconds. Let's see what that sounds like. I mean, you can kind of hear where the kick comes in, but because it's a very, very musical EQ, it can actually sound a lot better. So let's listen to both these together now. And if I bypass TrackSpacer. Now let's see what it sounds like without it in the mix. Okay, and with it. So I can hear a lot more subby details, but I think I'm going to actually bring it out a little more because I want that kick to be very noticeable, especially right here where it gets drowned out. So let's try that one more time, and let's actually speed up the attack just a tiny bit and open up the release. So here we go. Cool. So now you can actually hear it. It was very obvious and apparent because obviously I'm making it pump really crazy. So let's just see what it sounds like in solo. So I'm going to bring this out a little bit. I'm going to reduce the ratio because we don't want it to be super crazy, and we're going to play with the attack so it basically comes down right when we need it to. I'm thinking maybe around 42 milliseconds. And let's try just a slightly faster attack. We don't really have to worry about it much because the bass doesn't have a lot of transient detail going on. Cool. So let's see how that sounds like in the mix. Cool. So we can actually hear it, especially right here. If I have it bypassed, it basically isn't even discernible. But with it on, get off. I gave him my blanket and he gave me his word. So we've actually done a lot. Now, I did try to treat this in a very subtle way. I don't want the kick to sound like it's in your face at all times. This isn't a metal mix, but I want it to be at least audible, and I want it so anyone who has a sub can feel the kick hit them. Anyway, that's it for today's video. This has been Jerry Mateo with Plugin Boutique, and I'll see you guys next time.